welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast, where we are going to be exploring another truth episode. So clearly our last one didn't get us cancelled, or hopefully it didn't. Maybe there's still time. But we are here to explore a truth that Donna is bringing to the table today. So take it away, Donna.
Hi everyone, good to be back with all of you. So I have a truth that I want to talk about, and for those that have worked with me or those that have come along to some of my surgeries, some people have heard me talk about this previously. But my truth today related to procurement careers is around networking, and networking is one of those words. Even the word itself, I think, is it can be quite an emotive topic and word for many people. And a lot of the clients that I work with, they're not feeling particularly confident with their networking ability. Often there's quite a lot of regret, actually, I would say as well, like particularly where situations have happened suddenly at work, suddenly, restructures, possible redundancy, and suddenly, where individuals are finding themselves very quickly needing to start looking for a role. Often their lack of previous networking comes up as quite a big regret. So I want to talk about networking, but the truth of the matter is, and this is maybe the sort of slightly controversial, I guess, aspect, is, many of the people I'm talking to, they're senior procurement professionals and they're really worried and concerned about networking. They don't know what to do. They're not feeling confident about it. But actually, in reality, like so many of you are networking really well for your own organisation and your own company. Like you're doing it internally often with stakeholders, you're doing it externally with suppliers, sometimes collaborating with competitor businesses, sometimes, you're networking for prospective clients or potential clients, etc., current clients. But so many are not doing it for themselves. And so, the truth that I want to bring is that actually a lot of the skills that you're already using really regularly. Like these are skills that are really transferable to apply for your own career growth. So yeah, I would love to use today's episode to really kind of encourage people to think about and ask themselves, like, why are you willing to network for your company, your organization, the company that you're probably not going to be at for the rest of your working life, but you're not doing it for your own career growth.
Definitely an interesting topic there. And like you say, it does come up in conversation quite a lot around networking, doesn't it? In coaching conversations, both as you've touched on, there's an internal networking aspect to this, and then there's the networking for your own career growth. So that is
Definitely.
definitely a truth. So where do you suggest we start with this? Because, it's quite a big topic in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to start with a stat, if you're okay,
Mm.
actually. So for those that are listening or watching, you will probably see if we're connected on LinkedIn that I'm quite a fan of kind of running polls. They're not hugely scientific, but it gives a snapshot of kind of sentiment out there. And I ran a poll earlier this year, which was asking individuals, procurement professionals that had secured a role from the beginning of last year to when they were answering the poll. So it was over probably about a 15-month period. Like the question was, how did you secure your role? What was it that actually led to the role? And it was giving them four options. I can't even remember all the options now. It was kind of through a job advertisement, through a recruiter introduction, a relationship with someone in your network, and a direct approach. So that was either the company approaching you directly or you approaching the company directly. And 40% of people that had secured a procurement role had secured that role through someone in their network. Only 15%, I think it was from the top of my head, got their job successfully through applying to an advert. And it was a good 30 something, late 30s, had secured their role through a relationship with a recruiter. So, actually, if you add the relationship with your network, relationship with the recruiter ones together, that was 70 something percent. It was almost 80% of roles had been secured where there was some form of relationship, and that comes through networking, really. And so for me, that is such an important stat because actually that is what's working. And this is not an episode which is all about looking for jobs. Like that is not the only purpose at all of networking. Like networking is so beneficial in so many different ways, whether you're in a corporate career, or kind of, self-employed, running a business, etc. Like it's just so, so, so beneficial. So I just thought that stat, like a lot of people have been really quite shocked by that.
Mm.
Because often, particularly if you relate it to job searches, a lot of people, they're spending all their time looking at the job boards and spending all this time applying for live adverts, but that isn't actually in the current market what's working a lot of the time. So, there is a lot of kind of, I'm just trying to phrase it, like there's a lot of risk aversion, I would say, at the moment, like in organizations. Companies are worried about making the wrong decisions. They're worried about spending money on the wrong things, bringing the wrong people on board, and actually, um, kind of companies feel quite reassured when they're bringing someone on board who is already kind of known to them in some capacity. Whether that's right or wrong, often it's not the most qualified person that's getting the job. It's the person that can do the job really well that also is known by someone or people in the organization. So yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because I just think it's quite a telling stat actually that can really show the benefits of, investing time to build the right relationships with the right people.
Yeah, and so I think what we're saying here, like networking, it's not just about one dimensional, further in your career. It's networking as a practice, as a career practice, isn't it? As part of the role and as part of building relationships, which is ultimately what procurement professionals need to do across the business to get the function seen, to get the
Yeah,
job done, so to speak. So it's definitely an interesting one. And I wonder whether as well, based on what we were just saying or what you were just explaining there from your insights, and by the way, 40%, that's a huge number. I was really shocked when you told me that. So I think maybe there is this outdated perception of what networking is. We think of it as these big conferences,
yeah,
these
yeah,
big being,
totally.
and I know we've talked about the perceptions of being the loudest in the room all the time. So
Yeah,
so I think what we're saying here is that there are many different ways to achieve good networking.
yeah. And I mean, I've said this before, and I will say it again on here. Like I think it needs a rebrand.
Yeah.
You know, the word itself, like the word itself, and I will often when I start talking about it to people, I will start by saying, right, how do you feel about the word networking? And I just kind of watch their reaction. And, you know, occasionally people are like, do you know what? I really enjoy it. But usually people are, oh, you get all these kind of like squirming type reactions. And people, don't resonate well with the word itself. But, you know, it is about relationships. It's, you know, because I think we think of networking events, don't we? But you know, that is just one part of networking. And actually, you know, networking events can be great, but there's so many other ways as well. And actually, networking, it can also be having a one-to-one conversation with someone that you already know. You know, so I think there's just like there's a whole spectrum of kind of, you know, different ways, online, offline, groups of people, people you know, people you don't know, etc. There's so many different ways. This is the beauty. And actually nowadays with the technology that we've got available to us, you know, tools like LinkedIn, which again I know is a really emotive topic for people, but LinkedIn is a social networking site for the purpose of connecting, you know, people in business to other relevant people in business. And like actually used well, it's amazing. It's amazing that you can, you know, we've got this ability now to, like, you know, if there's a company you've always wanted to work for and you've always admired from the sidelines, I actually in a couple of clicks, you could potentially kind of set yourself up with conversations with people in that business. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I think, yeah, there are just so many different ways to network. But I think, yeah, your point and around what people think networking is, like that needs to change because I think actually what's happening is kind of going back to that should word, people feel that they should be networking, but they're uncomfortable with a big element like often the big events, you know, where they feel that they have to be the loudest person to be seen or noticed or heard, etc. And that then puts them off just networking overall. But yeah, it is a skill and it's a skill for life, but it's a skill that I think in my experience I haven't yet come across someone that has told me that they're not confident with networking, who then hasn't been able to find a way of doing it and doing it in a way that, you know, actually they can learn to enjoy because it's skills that most people already have and are using day to day in their day job.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that made me think about how another poll that I've seen on LinkedIn, but also that I've seen in the workplace in terms of statistics about how many people in procurement might identify as being introvert.
Mm,
And so if someone identifies as being an introvert, there's an inkling or a feeling that that networking is out of their reach
yeah.
because they're not big vocal people, whereas actually introverts are very relationship driven people, just in a
Mm,
different way. And like you were saying about a one-to-one conversation is very different and maybe more comfortable than doing the big conference networking piece, because we sometimes see people who are very loud and love to be around lots of people would benefit from networking in those spaces. And so I think I don't know whether this is my perception, so I'm putting it out there as a perception that I've heard or maybe experienced, and I'm not saying it's truth here, but when someone does identify as an introvert, they just think that they don't have people skills, and it is by far the opposite. They are very capable of holding really good conversations. They're usually very good listeners.
mm,
So it's something where we need to really harness, and that's the conversations that I tend to have in my coaching conversations. You know, I was working with this brilliant senior procurement leader who identified as an introvert and therefore thought that networking was out of their reach, and we really, really broke that belief apart
mm,
and thought about where can we actually apply where your strengths are into a networking
yeah.
situation. And then all of a sudden they were able to do quite a few different things with at once they had reframed that belief.
Mm,
And just and just to develop on that point, again, I've seen it in the workplace where we did some personality profiling, and there was a very large percentage of the procurement teams who identified in it was insights discovery who identified as the blue-green colours, and those are very introvert qualities. So yeah, I think there's that perception there, but also I wonder whether we pick up beliefs about networking from the environments that we work in. So if networking isn't done as a practice within your
Mm,
organization, within your team, your business unit, whatever that is, then we might not be so open to doing it. So, and I remember hearing conversations, well, if they've got time to go network, why haven't they got time to be doing the job? So that was a
right.
really common perception I heard. So I wonder whether beliefs, as you mentioned, outdated beliefs and perceptions of networking is also at play here when it comes to the truth that we're trying to break into today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there is definitely an interesting point there around kind of those perceptions of networking. And I think people often think, oh, they're looking for another job. That's the worry, isn't it? It's like, oh, they've updated their LinkedIn, they're looking for another job, they're suddenly doing these things. Like it isn't, yeah, it's kind of, the purpose of networking, the perception of the purpose of networking, I think, is quite outdated. But as I said, individuals are doing this already. Often they're doing it for their organisation, kind of internally, but they're not then, I think, always then looking at, how are you then developing even those relationships internally? Because the thing is, you never know where that relationship could lead you internally.
Mm,
And I think, often again, when I've broken it down with clients that I've worked with, they'll develop a really good relationship with that internal stakeholder, often for the life cycle of that piece of work they're doing with that stakeholder, and then that's it. The relationship sometimes just ends there. And they might have worked with them for this, quite an extensive period of time on some, really challenging work and developed this great relationship, but then that communication kind of stops, and at some point, that person moves on to another organization, or even not. They might not have moved on to another organization, they stay internally, but you just never know where keeping the relationship going can lead to. And so I think that's the kind of, for me, like networking, it's about building relationships with the right people, but then nurturing those relationships
yes.
and keeping those relationships over time. Because actually, who knows, like where, staying in touch with that internal stakeholder can lead for you in your career
Mm,
later down the line. But it could be that that person moves on or you move on, and then there's an opportunity to possibly work together again, or to ask advice, or actually keeping up with the key important kind of relationships. And of course, you can't stay in touch with everyone all of the time. Like we just don't have the hours to be able to do that. But it's kind of working out for yourself, like probably also like who are the people that you've just loved working with? Um, who are those people that yeah, you just really enjoyed the interactions with, and you over time built this really nice relationship based on mutual trust and respect, etc. Because actually, like staying in touch with those people can just change everything.
mm. And I think you've touched on a really important point there about the nurturing of relationships, because sometimes when people feel like they have to network, it might be because they're looking for their next move, for example,
Yeah,
or they need something. And sometimes people, if we go into networking with that mindset of what we need,
yeah,
sometimes others can smell that from a mile off, right? And so something that I've learned a lot about when it comes to influence, for example, and networking and building trust is that sometimes going into networking, going in with the mindset of what you can do for others and not just about what others can do for you is actually it takes the pressure off a little
exactly.
bit. but it also can really sort of help develop authentic relationships. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a purpose. We've talked a lot about purpose here and about goal setting and about obviously if you're going to do something, make sure it's got intentionality behind it. But certainly when it comes to networking, it's not just about what you can get out of it, it's about what you can give to the party, what you can give to others. So, for example, what introductions can you make between
Mm,
people who you know would really get along well? I mean, I often do it with my clients if they
yeah,
both share a passion for something. If
yeah,
I've got clients who share a passion for sustainability, I put them in touch with each other.
yeah.
And so it's not just about what you're getting out of it, it's about what you're putting into it as well.
Yeah, definitely. That mutually beneficial, like a true relationship,
Mm.
it's on a, it's on a kind of an equal level. Yeah, and even I think, if you use the example of suddenly you found yourself in a scenario where you do need to look for a new role and quite quickly, even if you don't lead with that, just knowing that information yourself can feel really uncomfortable. And not authentic, not genuine as well.
Mm.
Like you kind of, I think a lot of people feel like, people are going to just see right through me. They know that I'm only getting in touch with them because I'm looking for a job and a role. And so I think the key thing here is about developing those relationships if you can before you need them, like not because you need something and you want something, but actually just because you know that, having the right people in your corner, the right people that know the right things about you. I mean that in itself is going to grow your own personal brand. Like your personal brand is essentially, you know, what are people saying when you're not there? Like who's advocating for you when you're not in the room and you're not in the conversation? And all of that comes down to having the right relationships and the right people knowing the right things about you. But it is a skill, and it is a skill, but it can be enjoyable. That's the thing. Like, you know, there's because there are so many different ways now of developing relationships. Like it really can be enjoyable if you just work out um, the type that suits you most. Like that's the thing. We don't have to go to all the events and the round table events and the conferences and, connect with people we don't know on LinkedIn and do all these things. Like actually just picking a thing or a
Mhm.
couple of things and then, focusing on that step by step, review how it's going, work out, almost like test what's working, what's not, kind of, then, slightly change how you approach it. Like that's much more sustainable. And, this is about developing a skill for life, not a temporary set of actions that you do because you really need it. Like actually, if you've only got time to allocate 30 minutes a month to it, okay, you've only got time for 30 minutes, but what could that 30 minutes actually look like?
Yeah, could that be a coffee with somebody virtually that you've always wanted to reach out to, or somebody internally that you really admire, that you might want to
Yeah,
mentor you maybe? And that's the thing, 30 minutes in a month might not sound like a lot, but if that's one virtual coffee with somebody every month, that's 12 people over the year. So yeah,
yeah,
I think something you said about what you enjoy, because we all have things that we enjoy, and finding that type of thing that work, that type of networking that fits that joy will make it a lot easier. Because, like we've said, I think networking, you think about these specific events for networking
mm,
or these big in-person things, whereas now, like you say, the world's opened up, the virtual options are there.
yeah,
So, and like even if like back to a client that I worked with, they really identified with being an introvert, and then at the end of the coaching, they're like, but I can now say yes to more things because I know that that's
yeah,
also a strength because they are so relationship
yeah,
driven. They just realize that for them, it's more about having that one-on-one conversation with somebody rather than being the
yeah,
loudest in the room. So I
yeah,
definitely think it's an option that's available to everybody, regardless of your personality type.
yeah, definitely. And going back to that loudest in the room, like a kind of statement, that I've always really liked is, rather than focusing on being the most interesting person in the room, focus on being the most interested person
Yes.
and be curious and ask questions. And actually, often the people that make the biggest impact are the ones that really showed that they took the time to get to know you and listen and understand and maybe go away and reflect and then come back with some further thoughts on it. So I
Yeah.
think, that for me, it's like it's not about kind of standing up on stage and hi everyone, I'm here. It's kind of, yeah, work out what works well for you based on, yeah, like you say, kind of your style and what you enjoy. And even those big events, like those big events can be really daunting, even for very confident people, even for people that identify as extroverts some of the
Yes.
time. But there are things that you can do to um, to kind of to make it more enjoyable and more productive. That's the thing. Again, sometimes I think people put pressure on themselves. Oh, I need to network. I need to network. I need to go to the event. But the purpose of it is to try and start to develop new relationships or nurture the existing relationships with the people that are there. So just going to the event itself and saying, oh, I've ticked the networking box, like actually, if you're not using it as a method to develop or grow your relationships in some kind of way, then probably the networking piece is almost missing. But it's kind of thinking about what can you do to make it more comfortable? Who else do you know that's going? Could you meet up with someone beforehand going together? Could you arrange to meet some people in there that are going? I'll often post if I'm going to, a big event. I'll kind of post on LinkedIn, I'm going, who's going. I'll keep an eye out for people's posts, and if they say they're going, I might drop them a message and say, oh, I see you're going. But I will always, 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 if I'm going to a, like a conference type event, I will arrange like one-to-ones with people before I go. I've never
Yeah.
gone to one and not at least lined up a few of those from either it'll be people that I can see that are speaking there or other people that I know that are going. And I kind of then know, I know what I'm walking into and I know what conversations are going to happen. And you always, like, always will meet other people whilst I'm there. But actually, it would be very easy if I didn't do that. You could go along and almost not have met that many conversations.
Mm, yeah, and I think you've highlighted a few great strategies there because it feels a lot more comfortable if you're not going on your own, if you're not, if you're not confident in going on your own to an event like that. But also just it is about reaching out and just saying, oh, hey, I've seen you're going to be there. I've liked your stuff on LinkedIn, if it's a LinkedIn thing, or if
Yeah,
it's somebody who you work with, be great to get to know each other. And in a world where we do seek a bit more authenticity and real people, it's so nice to be able to build genuine, authentic relationships, and you don't know where those things
yeah,
might go. I mean, we've talked before about how we met and how it's turned into
yeah,
this, and
yeah,
and how
yeah,
we didn't have those expectations right at the start. And some of the best relationships I've built since starting the business have been through not from wanting anything from each other, just from, hey,
yeah,
how's it going? Let's have a chat. How's your week
yeah,
been? And they are the best ones. And I've got a bit of a radar for people who I feel like, oh, they just want something from me.
yeah,
And as opposed to, do they want to build a genuine relationship? And going back to something that you said earlier about to be the most interested, like, practice that active listening. And
mm,
because it's not an easy skill, active listening. We all can spend time in the conversational listening to respond, but definitely to show an interest in the people that you're meeting with rather than just trying to put yourself across. It's a practice, but it's something that can be done. And it actually, again, it takes the pressure off, I think, if you make sure
mm.
you are showing an interest in the other person.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like this is a topic. I mean, I feel like I could talk for hours and hours about networking. There's so much to it, but obviously we don't have that today. But um, what do you think? What would be some good takeaways for people? Do you think listening in today? So, obviously the whole premise of this is look, there's so much positive stuff to gain from just having the right relationships with the right people. Let's rephrase, the networking, but just having those right relationships. So yeah, so what would you kind of suggest for people?
I would say that regardless of how you feel your personality is aligned or your characteristics are aligned with what networking appears to be, is that there are options for everybody, regardless of how you view your
Yeah,
career and the networking. So do some work like to find what you enjoy and
yeah,
build upon that. So if it is more one-on-one conversation, explore that element, ignore the big events for now. Or
yeah.
if you are more of an extrovert, is it the big events that you prefer? And, we're not saying that you can't do it all, but start small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think those small steps. I think I would come back to like purpose. So
Mm.
I'd always just really think about, because again, this isn't just networking for networking's sake. It's not just building relationships with just anyone just because that's a good thing to do. It's like actually really think about what are you hoping to achieve from this, like in the longer term, like what types of people would it be really great to be able to kind of, have in your corner, to have relationships with, to learn from, to share with, to offer help to. So I'd kind of almost think like, a little bit about the like, the why, why do you want to, like, if you're thinking about doing this, why and who are the types of people that it would be really helpful to, but always look as well, I think, again, um often when people think of that word networking, it's awkward because they envisage strangers, people they
Mm.
don't know. But for me, the best networking starts with the people that you already know, and
Yes.
they can lead you to the strangers. Like
Mm.
actually, with a lot of my clients, we don't even need to get to the point of, you introducing yourself to strangers, because actually we all know people. We've all worked with people. Many procurement professionals have studied with others, etc. And so it's kind of, I would always start with who do I already know that it would be great to, reliven the relationship with, and then kind of build from there, because often that just that one conversation can lead to an introduction or another conversation, or you just don't know where they lead, and that's the beauty. But so I think it's just, yeah, to work out, you know, what do you hope to achieve from building strong relationships, what types of people, and then, yeah, like we said, just kind of work out, what type of networking feels most comfortable. And is it just a drop someone that you worked with previously a message and say, look, we've not caught up in ages, let's grab a virtual coffee or an in-person coffee? Or is it, is it more kind of, increasing your current network with people that you don't yet know? So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. Just to add on to that, as well, is around what we were saying earlier about don't just think about or don't put the pressure on you for getting something out of the networking on its own. What can you bring? Because you've got plenty to bring to your
totally.
network. So what we were
Yeah,
saying earlier about introductions, about the listening, helping somebody else to feel heard. There are so many things you could bring to networking, and
yeah,
you'll be surprised at how much you get back
yeah,
by
totally.
taking that mindset as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's something actually quite a few of my clients we've done. So, we do work on, how can they develop their networking strategy, their plan for themselves. And, sometimes they've actually kind of almost listed out, what do they have to bring to the table and to offer someone else, and what in an ideal world could they hope to get from someone else. And then it's actually looking at, right, well, who are the people in your network that you've got on this kind of list of potential people that you want to
Yeah.
engage with, and actually why might you want to engage? Is an offer of help to them going to be better as a start point? And obviously you don't want to be going saying, oh hi, can you do me a recommendation and this and that and that. It's like all take. It's yeah. So I think just being really aware of, what you can bring and what you could then potentially ask for during one of those conversations that you have with someone.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. Brilliant. Well, thank you for bringing that truth today, Donna. We'll see how that one lands. And I think it's a good one, but I think it's a good one. And like you say, it's a massive subject. And, we'd love to hear more, as always, from anyone who's listening about
Yeah.
what's resonated, what you'd like to hear more of.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, I get a lot of feedback from people that I've spoken to about this, and they come back and say, oh, like my change of approach now. I had a message from someone that had attended one of my free job search surgeries, and she messaged to say, this was last week, that her change of approach from the conversation we'd had around networking had led to an opportunity. And she messaged me the day after handing in a notice and said,
Wow.
thank you so much. Like I've secured a role just through that, that conversation that never would have taken place. So it does really work, and it can be enjoyable. It's just kind of finding that way. But yeah, as Laura said, if this resonates, and if any of you want any help or support from either of us, from both of us, like please do feel free to kind of reach out and just get in touch, and then we can have a conversation and see whether it's a fit to to support you in some
Mm.
capacity.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Thanks everyone, take care, bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.